The stage lights felt harsher than the sun he was used to back home. They poured down from above, white and unforgiving, making the huge theater blur into shadows. For a moment, the 15-year-old boy stood perfectly still at the center of the stage, his thin shoulders rising and falling as he tried to calm his breathing. The microphone felt heavy in his hands, slick with sweat. He reminded himself to stand straight, the way he had practiced in his bedroom, singing softly so his neighbors wouldn't complain. Behind him, the audience murmured. Hundreds of strangers, some curious, some distracted, some already judging. He could feel their eyes on him, weighing him, deciding whether he mattered. He had never been this far from home before. Back in the Philippines, life was loud in a different way, motorbikes, street vendors, children laughing in narrow alleys. Here, the silence before a performance felt louder than any noise he knew. He introduced himself, his accent gentle, his voice trembling just enough to give away his nerves. He spoke about his age, about singing wherever he could. At home, at school events, sometimes just to pass the time when there was nothing else to do. He didn't mention the long nights practicing quietly, or how music became a place to escape when things felt uncertain. He simply smiled, hoping it was enough. When asked about his song choice, he hesitated for half a second. "Unchained Melody," he said. The words floated into the air and landed with weight. A few people in the audience shifted in their seats. It was an old song. A powerful song. One that had broken many voices before him. Even one of the judges raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the choice. Simon Cowell leaned back, lips pressed together, arms crossed, his expression unreadable but skeptical. The boy felt that doubt like a cold breeze. He had expected it. He had felt it his whole life. People often looked at him and saw only a kid, too young to understand a song about longing and deep love. But when he practiced, alone and unnoticed, the song felt different. To him, it wasn't about romance. It was about distance, about missing, about waiting for something better and believing it would come. The music began softly. The opening notes filled the room, slow and familiar. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, blocking out the judges, the cameras, the crowd. In that instant, the massive stage disappeared. He wasn't in a competition anymore. He was back home, standing by an open window, singing into the warm night air. He took a breath. His fingers tightened slightly around the microphone as his chest rose. This was the moment that mattered, the first note. His heart pounded so hard he wondered if the microphone would pick it up. Somewhere in the audience, someone coughed. A chair creaked. Time seemed to stretch, as if the whole room was holding its breath with him. He opened his eyes. The first note left his lips, gentle and controlled, not loud, not forced. It was clear, floating smoothly over the music. Instantly, something shifted in the room. Conversations stopped. The casual noise faded away. Heads lifted. Simon leaned forward without realizing it. The doubt that had filled the air moments earlier began to dissolve. The boy felt it too. As soon as the sound escaped him, his fear loosened its grip. His voice didn't shake. It didn't crack. It carried the emotion he had kept hidden, the kind you don't learn from lessons but from living quietly and feeling deeply. Each word followed naturally, like it had been waiting inside him for the right moment to be heard. By the time he reached the second line, the stage no longer felt so big. The lights no longer burned. There was only the song, steady and sincere, and a young voice that, against all expectations, was finally being truly heard. As the song moved forward, something remarkable happened inside the theater. The boy's posture changed almost without him noticing. His shoulders relaxed, and his grip on the microphone softened. Fear slowly gave way to focus. Each note felt less like a test and more like a release, as if the music itself was carrying him forward. The melody rose, and with it, his confidence. His voice grew fuller, not louder in a forced way, but richer, deeper with feeling. He shaped each phrase carefully, letting the words breathe. The longing in the song slipped naturally into his tone, and the audience felt it. People who had been leaning back now leaned forward. Phones stopped moving. Even the cameras seemed to hold still, as if afraid to interrupt the moment. Simon Cowell's expression changed again. The familiar look of criticism faded, replaced by something closer to disbelief. He glanced briefly at the other judges, as if checking whether they were hearing the same thing. They were. One judge's mouth had fallen slightly open. Another nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the boy, recognizing something rare unfolding in real time. The boy reached the higher notes, the part many singers feared. This was where voices often strained, where confidence collapsed. He took a careful breath, lifting his chin just enough, and let the sound rise naturally. The note was clean, strong. It filled the room without effort. A quiet gasp rippled through the audience, followed by murmurs of surprise. Someone whispered, "He's only 15, as if saying it out loud made it more believable. On stage, the boy felt the reaction before he fully understood it. He sensed the shift in energy, the invisible connection forming between him and the crowd. It was like being pulled into a current. Once inside it, all he had to do was trust it. His eyes opened wider now, no longer afraid to meet the judge's gaze. For the first time, he saw admiration where he had expected doubt. The orchestra swelled slightly, and his voice rode the wave. He didn't rush. He didn't hold back. Every word landed exactly where it needed to. The song's emotion wrapped around the room, heavy and tender at the same time. A few people in the audience pressed their hands to their mouths. Others wiped at their eyes, surprised by how deeply a young stranger's voice had reached them. As the final lines approached, the boy felt a strange calm settle over him. This was the part he loved most, where the song seemed to hover between hope and heartbreak. He poured everything into those last phrases, not technique, not ambition, but honesty. The sound carried his patience, his dreams, his quiet belief that music could open doors that seemed permanently closed. The final note lingered in the air, pure and unbroken. He held it just long enough, then released it gently, letting it fade on its own. For a heartbeat, there was complete silence. Not the awkward kind, but the stunned kind, the kind that follows something unforgettable. Then the room exploded. Applause crashed over him like a wave. People jumped to their feet, clapping, cheering, shouting. The boy blinked, overwhelmed, his chest tightening as he tried to process what was happening. He hadn't expected this. He had only hoped not to fail. The sound of approval felt unreal, almost too big to belong to him. The judges reacted at once. One slammed their button, spinning their chair around. Another followed instantly. Within seconds, every chair had turned, lights flashing, signals blaring. The coaches began speaking over one another, pointing at him, gesturing urgently, each wanting his attention, each wanting to be the one he chose. Simon Cowell didn't press a button. He didn't need to. He stood instead, clapping slowly, a wide smile on his face. When the noise finally softened, he shook his head and laughed in disbelief. "I did not expect that," he said honestly. "That was special." The boy stood frozen at center stage, eyes shining, heart pounding, realizing that a few minutes of courage had just changed the direction of his life. The applause slowly settled into a steady roar, and the boy finally remembered to breathe. His hands were shaking now, not from fear, but from disbelief. He glanced from one judge to another, unsure where to look first. Moments ago, he had stood alone with his doubts. Now, the entire room felt focused on him, waiting for his next move. One of the coaches spoke first, their voice warm and excited. They talked about potential, about how a voice like his couldn't be taught, only guided. Another coach jumped in immediately, promising discipline, growth, and a future on stages far bigger than this one. They leaned forward in their chairs, gestures animated, competing not with criticism but with hope. It felt unreal to hear adults argue over who deserved to support him. The boy listened quietly, eyes wide. Each word washed over him like a dream. He had imagined applause before, imagined approval, but he had never imagined choice. Back home, opportunities were rare and fragile. Here, they were being offered all at once, and he wasn't sure how to hold them without dropping something important. Simon Cowell finally raised his hand, bringing a calm authority to the chaos. The room quieted. He looked directly at the boy, his expression serious but kind. He spoke about honesty, about how the performance wasn't perfect because it was flawless, but because it was real. "You didn't sing to impress," he said. "You sang because you meant it. That's why everyone felt it." The boy swallowed hard, nodding slowly, committing those words to memory. When asked how he felt, the microphone trembled slightly as he lifted it. He searched for the right words, then gave up and spoke from the heart. He talked about singing at home, about practicing quietly, about never imagining this moment. His voice cracked just a little, not in weakness, but in truth. The audience responded with gentle applause, encouraging rather than overwhelming. The host reminded him that he had to choose a coach. The realization hit him fully now. This wasn't just praise. This was a decision that could shape his future. He looked again at the judges, seeing not just famous faces but different paths stretching out in front of him. His chest tightened with the weight of it. He thought of his family watching from home, likely crowded around a small screen, holding their breath. He thought of the nights when he doubted himself, when singing felt like a private comfort rather than a promise. He reminded himself why he had come, not to win, not to be famous, but to be heard. Slowly, he made his choice. As he said the coach's name, the audience erupted again, louder than before. The chosen coach stood instantly, clapping and smiling with genuine pride. They walked onto the stage and wrapped him in a careful, respectful embrace. The boy laughed softly, overwhelmed, his face glowing under the lights. The other coaches nodded in understanding, some smiling, some shaking their heads in playful disappointment. Simon gave him a small thumbs up, a rare sign of approval that felt just as powerful as words. As the moment settled, the boy stood beside his coach, looking out at the audience one more time. The stage no longer felt intimidating. It felt like a beginning. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult. There would be pressure, expectations, and challenges he had never faced before. But for the first time, he wasn't afraid of that. When he finally walked off stage, the lights dimming behind him, he took one last deep breath. Somewhere inside him, a quiet certainty formed. No matter what happened next, this moment could never be taken away. He had stepped onto a stage with nothing but his voice, and walked away knowing it was enough.